Hello, my name is Pappy Bedard, and today I want to talk to you about this area up here that lets you load different layouts. I find it sometimes a little cumbersome to find the layout I want and click on it, so what I wanted to do is create a shortcut key to easily switch between the layouts that I use most often. When I open Cinema 4D, it automatically loads this layout called Startup User. That's because I've modified the startup, the standard layout that comes with Cinema 4D, and made some modifications to it. Now, the way I did that is to go into Windows customization and customize palettes. I search for the commands I want. I drag and drop them in different areas. So I have this row of buttons along here. I have some buttons down here. Anyways, I've got it set up the way I like it. Now, to save that as your startup layout, what you have to do is go into Windows Customization and Save as Startup Layout. Now, when you do that, it creates a file which you can get to with Edit Preferences, Open Preferences folder, and underneath Preferences, it created a file called Template. It creates two files actually, one called Template L4D, which is the layout, and another one called Template PRF, which is the preferences. So it calls the file Template L4D, but it actually creates a layout called Startup User. So now, why do I want to make that easier? I mean, how hard is this? You click on this, you click on Startup User. Not very hard. But I often will work in projects like, for example, like this, where I want to work in the animation layout and then switch back to my Startup User for modeling and modifications and other stuff. And that takes 2 or 3 seconds. I'd rather just hit a shortcut key to quickly switch between layouts that I commonly use. So this is how I did it. So assuming you've already saved your startup layout, so you have a startup user layout in this menu, the next thing you can do is click on Script and then Script Manager. We're going to create a brand new Python script here. It's not very complicated. So we're just going to say File New. Now it automatically creates a Hello World script for you. Most of this I don't really want. I'm going to get rid of all this. And I want to import C4D and OS. And I'll explain why in a second. All right, I don't need this Hello World. We do want a main procedure, and we want this statement at the bottom here. So what's the main procedure look like? Well, I'm going to set a variable layout name, ln. You can name it anything you want. And I know already that name of that is called template.l4d. And I'm going to create the layout, another variable to make the layout path. Now there's a function C4D storage GE get C4D path. Case is very important in here. You got to get all the upper and lower case characters correct. And it takes as a parameter C4D dot, this is a constant, C4D underscore path underscore pref. This will boil down to the exact same preference folder that it shows here. It actually returns the preference folder under this directory. So this little bit of code will return wherever that path is. Now, in order to turn this into a path plus a file name, I want to add the operating system separator. That would be like a backslash in Windows. And onto that, I want to add the layout name that I defined in the line above. So let's see if I got this right. I'm going to make this spelled right. Template. All right, let's see. C4D storage get C4D path C4D path prefs. Oh, needs an S at the end. I could tell it was wrong because it didn't turn blue. If it's a recognized variable, it'll turn blue. Now, how did I know what to put in there? Let me show you that. If you Google Cinema 4D Python SDK documentation, you can click on this and you can see all the modules. And so what I did is I wanted to look at storage. And here it is, get C4D path. We'll look at the documentation for that little function. So these are the static variables that you can use to access different paths on your system. C4D path prefs, which is what I used, is the Cinema 4D preferences directory. That's the one in your user. Like, for example, well, I'll get into a couple of these in a minute. But anyway, so that's where that came from. And I am about to call now that function. So I want to call C4D documents. I'm going to load a file. Load a file. So that comes in the C4D module. C4D documents module. So load file, and that requires a file name and path, which is what we have just defined. So that will load the file, and that's pretty much it. So this, now we're going to save this. So when you click Save As, it's automatically going to put it in your preference root directory under library scripts. And I'm just going to call it startup user, I guess, just like it's called. So that's the name of the layout. So it creates a py file, which is a Python file. So that's our script, and we've saved it. I am going to test this by changing my layout to animate. Go back into script manager. All right, so that's what we just typed in. And I'm just going to execute it and see if it works. And it did. It restored my startup user. Go back into script manager. And now we're going to create a shortcut key for it. So I clicked on shortcut, and it brings up a list of all the commands on your system here. So I'm going to search for a shortcut to begin with to see if one's available. So I'm going to do control, I'll do control slash because it's easy to reach. Okay, great. There are no matches for that. So that's what I'm going to use. I'll clear that. I'll search for that startup script I just did. There it is there. You can see startup user. and I'm going to assign a shortcut to it. I'll hit Control/ and then assign, and that should do it. I'll close this. I'll close this. Now let's test it again. And I'll go back to my animate. Now I'll hit Control/ and bang. So now I can save myself about 3 seconds every time I want to switch from animate back to my startup. So now let me continue by showing you 2 other places that you might want to be aware of for making shortcuts to some of these other layouts. So what you have to know is how to find all these various layouts. Where are they? Well, I can tell you that the Cinema 4D layouts are in one place. The ones you save are in a different place. And the one you save as startup is in a different place. I've already showed you that if you go into Save as Startup Layout, that it puts it in your preference folder. It creates one called template.l4d. If you use Save Layout As, it puts it in the Preferences Library Layouts folder. So let's do that. Well, I'll show you here what I've already done. So I have one called, let's look at this one, Cycles 4D. It puts the word user after it. I've saved it as Cycles 4D. And I can show you where that is. So go into my Preferences folder and go into Library Layout. There it is, Cycles 4D L4D. So that's the layout I want to load with the script. So let's do that. Go back into Script Manager. And I'm just going to copy our prior, select all this, Control C to copy, File New, select all that, Control V to paste. So now I have a new script with exactly the same code in it. This is all pretty much what we want, but I want to change this so that it grabs the path of the library layouts directory. So let's go back and check the documentation here. So to get to the library of the user, I have to use this. I'm just going to Control C on that, and I'm going to paste it in here. And then let's look at that again. So it has to be under library. So right now that's where we are, library. I have to put the word layout after that. So the OS, by the way, that's why I imported OS, because that's where that comes from. So before we get to the file name, I want to add OS separator plus layout plus another separator plus the file name, and the file name is Cycles 4D. So let's give, I'll go ahead and save that. We'll call that Cycles 4D. And save it. I will go ahead and execute this to test it. Well, to test it, I'll change the layout first. Go to Animate. Go back into Script Manager and execute it. And there it is. It brought up that layout. So I'll go ahead and assign a shortcut to that. Script Manager, shortcut, And I'll give this one, well, let's say control quote and assign. Finally, well, let me test that. I'm going to do control slash. There it is, my startup. Control quote. There it is, my cycles. Now, I want to create one more for animate. Now, this one is a system layout. And where are those? Well, I'll go back to the documentation. They're actually in the Cinema 4D library. So I can show you where that is. So let's see if I, whoops. If I go to, on Windows, it's C program files. Maxon, Cinema 4DR20 in my case, library. So that's where that is. So we need to go to there and then under layout. And there's animate L4D. These are all the layouts that come with Cinema 4D. So I'm going to copy this, go back to my scripts, manager. Well, let's see. First, I'm going to copy this. File new, paste, and it was just library without the user on it. And it still had the separator and it still had the layout subdirectory, and the name of it was animate. A-N-I-M-A-T-E. So I'll save that script as animate. I'll give it a test by hitting execute. And it did. It switched to animate. So I'll give it a shortcut. So back to script manager. Create a shortcut. And this time I'll do, how about control semicolon. And assign that. Close all these. Now let's test this again. I'm going to hit control slash. There's my startup user. Control quote. There's my cycles 4D. Now control semicolon. There's my animate. So that's pretty much the end of the tutorial. I showed you how you can create shortcuts to either a Cinema 4D standard layout, a layout that you saved as, and as a layout that you've saved as a startup. So hopefully this will save you 2 or 3 seconds every couple days. Over the course of your career, it might save you an hour. You're welcome. See you next time.